Good morning. Namaste, I guess I should say, to be a proper yogi, right? So I'm gonna start focusing on talking about less about Ashtanga Yoga, unless there's more interest in some of that. A lot of people over the last year, especially when I was living in North India and doing some work there, were asking me about Tantra sadhana, and um, a big question came up always, many, many times around Kali. Um, Tantra sadhana is very often centered around Shiva or a Devi. Shakta Tantra is always around a Devi. And in any Tantra, there's always the focus on the two of them, the god and the goddess, Shiva, Shakti, the masculine, feminine, positive, negative, whatever you want to think of it as, two things intertwined together to make one whole. So Tantra is one of the few paths that explores both sides of that. And Tantra is traditional, real Tantra from India is always centered around a deity, a god. Oftentimes in the Western versions, they forget that, but I'll talk about that some other time. The big thing with Kali is people always asking, how do you choose Kali Ma? How do you choose Kali Ma? How do you choose which version of Kali Ma? How do you, this kind of thing. So first thing I have to say is you do not choose Kali. Kali chooses you. And if that doesn't make sense to you, then she has not chosen you. When it is for sure that she is going to be in your life, you realize you did not have any choice in the matter. So I'll tell you a little bit of a story. I'm going to tell over a few videos, I'm going to tell a few stories of my experiences. When I first started doing yoga, and I'm the kind of person who doesn't really do things lightly. I dig all the way in. I totally immerse myself in it. I do the study of where, of the situations these paths came into being. I like, because yoga and Ashtanga yoga especially is from India. I did a lot of research into India and how yoga came to humans, how people discovered that maybe doing these weird things with your bodies equated to this other thing, this other level of reality. Um, and if you know the story, you know that the idea of Shiva was telling Parvati about yoga and how humans can achieve this closer connection to God. Vishnu was in his Matsya form, Matsya as a fish, living in the water, and overheard it and then spread the stories around. That's a very simplistic version of it, but that's all I'm going to say right now because this video is not about that. So I read all this and I started, okay, maybe I need to think about Shiva and what he symbolizes or what he stands for rather than symbolizes. And so I got a Shiva Murti, a statue, and put it in a little room with all my books. I was slowly buying all these books of yoga and reading and stuff. And I realized quickly that Shiva is involved with Ganesha is there. Ganesha is in almost every yoga studio you see around the country in the US and in most places in India. And if you're in an Indian restaurant, almost anywhere on the planet, there's a Ganesh there. And Kali was involved there also. And they're all three different forms of the same energy. I think the beginning stage of that form, beginning form of that energy is Ganesha, remover of obstacles. Shiva as the destroyer, and Kali as time, destroying everything. She kind of comes in and sets a bomb. This isn't about that though. So I was trying to avoid Kali because if you look at imagery of Kali, she looks scary, blah blah blah. You think I don't necessarily want to invite this energy into my life, not realizing what she's really about. So I was in Mysore one year, and there was a young fellow who wasn't. Now he's almost, a lot older, but he was he was going to school to be an engineer. He was like 18 or 19 and in college to be an engineer. His family wanted him to do that. And in India, that's a big thing. The families kind of push you into being what they want because they want the best for you. Really, it's not a bad thing. They want the best for you and they want you to make money and have a good life. But what he really wanted was to learn puja and to do yoga. So he hung out in a lot of the cafes when he wasn't in school, or he would do his homework in a lot of the cafes around Gokulam area of Mysore, where all of the yogis hung out. And he would end up talking to some of them. Well, one day it was me, and I just kind of felt him looking at me. So I turned my head, and we started talking, and kind of got close. And we went to temples together. Went to a puja at his house. All these sort of things. Anyway, so at the end of my time there, which at the time it was about 3 to 4 months I was staying, 3 months for practice, and sometimes I'd stay an extra month because I was falling in love with India. But this was my second trip, and I was still not as in love with India as I became. But I did, so I left not too long after my 3 months was over. When I left, he gave me a book by Shambhavi Chopra, and her husband, at the time I didn't know who her husband was, but it's David Frawley, and I had read several of his books on Ayurveda and a couple of things that dig into Hinduism a little bit by him. But I didn't know at the time, but the book was called The Yogic Secrets of the Dark Goddess. And I got the book, and I looked at it, and I thought, oh, I've been avoiding Kali all this time out of fear, I guess, for lack of a better term. And here is, like being slapped in the face with this book. So I put the book in my carry-on bag. I was leaving the next day. On the flight, there weren't too many movies that I wanted to watch, and oftentimes I sleep and watch a movie or two. And there weren't, so I pulled out this book, turned on the overhead light, and started reading the first bit of it, and immediately was immersed into this idea of Kali in a different way than I was thinking before. Her as your mother, as the mother of the world, and as the birther of all existence. The creative energy is Shakti, and her being the symbol, her having the yoni, and this yoni being the symbol of creation and where the whole universe was created from. So it changed my idea of her, and the fierce aspect of seeing her the way she looks often, even though in westernized versions of the painting she's a lot prettier. In the Shastra, she's a demonic looking being with black skin and tusks that come out like a boar. She's a lot more frightful looking, but she still has a look that can scare some people. She looks like that because she is your mother, and think about the most fierce thing on the planet as far as a living being. That would be a mother protecting her child. So this mother is creating protection around a bubble of energy, of protection around her children. And if you're her child, she needs to look fierce to scare away all of the riffraff that can cause trouble in your life. So I kind of embraced it and got okay with it. And over the course of the next few years, going back to Mysore and coming back, I slowly learned a little bit here and there. I had an astrologer friend who I've quoted in one of these videos already, who introduced me to a lot of the ideas. He told me about the left-hand path, Vamachara. He told me about different aspects of Hindu worship, tantric worship, however you want to call it. It's kind of all the same thing to me at this point. Back then I didn't know much though, and he helped me with a lot of it. So I embraced it, and after a few more seasons, I went home, and I was staying in a place I wasn't terribly comfortable, and I decided it was time to do something more with it. And so, as things are wont to do, a friend of mine noticed I was posting pictures of Kali and posts with questions about her on Facebook and stuff. So I had known him through my Kundalini yoga days. He sent me this connection to a book. He sent me connections to a couple books that I still stand by are some of the best books I've ever read. But one of them was an introduction to a sadhana that had to do with Kali, and it was taught by an American woman, but a woman who spent a lot of time in India and an area of India at the time I knew nothing about called Kamakya, which is in Assam. Guwahati, the city. Assam is the state in India, northeast India. So I won't talk about that now because I didn't know anything about it then. I ordered the book on Amazon and I read it, and the sadhana sound very deep and very interesting. And at the time, which is no longer available, she still had a website, and you were able to connect to her through her website. And she would kind of give you pointers if you wanted, or connect with you on a deeper level if you wanted. Um, about the sadhana and how to make it deeper and how what the next stages were maybe after that. So I got a connection with her. Um, I could say she was my first guru. She would call it Gurvi. Gurvi is the female version of the guru. Guru is the male name for it. But many people say guru for both these days. And that sadhana I did for 90 days, for 108 days. 108 days. And I think it was 108 days, and then I kept doing it for many years. I chanted it at night without doing the full sadhana. Anyway, that led me to a deeper place in my connection with Kali. Um, but as you can kind of tell, I didn't try to embrace Kali. She kept coming and popping around the corners here and there until I gave in and surrendered to the fact that she was going to be there whether I liked it or not. And that was kind of beautiful, but it was also scary. But that's the beginning of the story of how I chose Kali, even though Kali chose me. Talk to you later. Bye.